Welcome to episode 83 of Mouth Dancing, hosted by Young. Thanks again for tuning in this week, like you did the week before, and the week before that. I really appreciate it. I appreciate it so much that I want to give you a hug. Maybe just a virtual hug because of COVID. Nah, I don't care. I'm not worried about COVID that much. Even though there's supposedly a bunch of variants constantly, arising and spreading among the population. I'm not too worried about it though. Some people are really worried about it. They're like, this winter is going to be hell because of the new variants. I don't doubt it. But what are we going to do? COVID is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's permanent. We got to live with it, basically. So I'll hug you, but you have to hug me back. We have to embrace one another. At least metaphorically. Because, I'm probably not going to meet all of you. All the people who listen to this podcast. But you never know, right? If we do meet, maybe we can show each other our appreciation. In a, appropriate way, of course. Not an inappropriate, weird way. Because that could get awkward. We don't even know each other that well. Unless you're someone who knows me really well. In which case we do know each other well. And we could, hug each other or whatever, and it wouldn't be that weird. But you never know. Anyway, I wanted to talk about aliens this week. People are always talking about aliens, right? And UFOs. They're like, wonder what planet aliens came from. They must be super advanced if they can travel to Earth, right? And, I don't know, I think one of the things that throws doubt into the whole idea of aliens is, if there are aliens, where do they live, right? What planet are they on? There has to be a planet kind of like Earth somewhere, right? Way out there in another galaxy, probably. And they're traveling here from that galaxy, which is further along in its evolution than us, and they're more advanced. But I say, what if there's no planet? What if they don't have a planet? What if aliens just live in outer space? And that's where they evolved and came from. They're somehow these beings that can exist in outer space. I don't know, what they eat or how they breathe or whatever, but they could have evolved in actual outer space, right? And that's why we're like, we don't know where exactly they are, because they're always just traveling around somewhere. And that would also explain why they're so different from us and we can't understand them. Because they evolved in a completely different environment. So we're expecting them to be like a certain way, like a mammal or a fish or a reptile or an insect or something. Something living on Earth, but they could be a totally different thing that we just can't even understand, that, eats differently, sleeps differently, thinks differently, moves differently, just exists completely differently from us. And maybe they're just like right outside the Earth and we just don't even see them because they're kind of existing in a different, almost, dimension or something, right? But every once in a while we see evidence of like their existence, right? Like the UFO, or someone got, abducted. Abductions could be purely mental. I've also put out one theory a while back that maybe it's just the US government doing abductions, right? Making people think it's aliens when it was actually the CIA doing experiments on people. But there could also just be aliens actually doing these abductions, right? The aliens that live in outer space. And that's where they are. That's why we can't find them. Why we're having such a difficult time, proving they exist. They're just there. They're right under our noses. They're just in outer space. And the properties of existence and physics and all that to which they respond, or to which they, I don't know, what would you call it, they behave under, are just totally different from ours. That's just some food for thought right there. Maybe aliens, maybe they eat thoughts for food. Maybe that's what they're doing to humans, right? They take our thought energy and they absorb it, and that's how they get nutrition. And that's why they're smarter than us, because they absorb all our thoughts into themselves, and they just have like these giant brains or computers or whatever. I don't know what you'd call it. But yeah, what does that entail? What do you think of that? Do you think that that's plausible? Maybe they don't even necessarily have like bodies like we imagine, like the little green man with the big head that looks kind of like, I don't know, a cross between a bug and an amphibian or something. They could just look totally like something we can't even imagine, right? They don't look like anything that we've ever seen or can even think of, right? And next I wanted to talk about boxer shorts. Do any of you guys wear boxer shorts out there? I wear boxer shorts. I wear regular boxers, and sometimes I wear boxer briefs, but I don't think boxer briefs are as comfortable as boxers. I wear boxer briefs if I'm doing some sort of physical activity, because they provide a little bit of support, you know? And my doctor suggested that for someone my age, if you're moving around a lot, like jumping around and stuff. He actually suggested I should wear like a cup or a jock strap or something, and I was like, I don't know about that. Seems a little extreme. I'm not, playing baseball or something. Not having 100-mile-an-hour fastballs thrown at me, so. But maybe he's right. Maybe I should be protecting that area a little bit better. But anyway, some support is good, right? So that's what I wear when I'm, exercising or whatever. But the rest of the time I just wear regular boxers. That's probably a lot more information than you needed about my underwear situation, but that's what it is, right? And have you ever noticed that on boxers they have like a little fly opening? And a lot of times there's a button there, and you can button it. It's kind of weird. I wonder what the function of it is. Do any guys actually use that? Mine usually pretty much just stays buttoned all the time. And when I, go to the bathroom to urinate, I just pull the elastic down past my, area to let the guys free to pee. And that's how I pee. I don't usually, open up the fly on my boxers to pee. It would be kind of awkward to use and a little bit inconvenient. Like fumbling around down there to get the fly open and then, use that to pee. I don't even use the fly on my pants generally. I just kind of pull my pants down in the front and urinate. I mean, if I'm wearing pants with like an elastic waistband, if there's a button and a zipper and all that, then you have to undo that to go to the bathroom. But then, who actually uses their fly on their boxers after that point? That seems like a lot of... You have to go through like 2 different flies to urinate. Do any guys actually use that thing? And do you button it every time, or do you just keep it unbuttoned? I think I've almost never used it, except maybe when I first bought a pair of boxers and I was kind of unfamiliar with how they work. And I was like, oh, what's this? I gotta use this to pee or something? And sometimes the fly opening is not even... It's kind of like a weird shape, or it's kind of small and it's like hard to use. The whole thing is really weird. I wonder why they even put it there. Seems like they should just get rid of it. It's like a waste. It's a complete waste of fabric and design and labor even. They have to put in all that work just to sew it and make an opening there and everything. I bet most guys don't even use it. So that's a public service announcement for all the factories out there making boxer shorts. You could save yourself a lot of time and money by just getting rid of that thing, and I don't think it would affect your sales at all. think a lot of people would still keep buying boxer shorts, regardless of that, because they don't use that thing anyway. And I want your business to thrive, so I'm letting you know. And lastly, let's talk about some of the images you're seeing if you're watching the YouTube version of my podcast. You're seeing images of the Sinchon massacre, which occurred in North Korea in 1950 during the Korean War. And it's from a museum in North Korea, actually, at the site of the massacre, called the Museum of American War Atrocities in Sinchon, North Korea. And they depict American soldiers doing horrific things, torturing people, killing people. And this stuff actually occurred. I mean, if you read the American propaganda about it, they're going to say, oh, it's exaggerated, that didn't really happen. But the fact of the matter is, these things did happen. I've read accounts from US soldiers of being told when they're out on their bombing missions to just kill anybody they see on the communist side, right? Anyone, villagers, women, children, old people. So they were just ordered to just kill anyone, even people just walking down roads, civilians. And that happened. That happened all throughout the Korean War. There's even, quotes from US, generals and army sergeants and whatnot about the stuff they did up there. It's absolutely horrific. They killed millions of civilians. In the North and the South, people who weren't on the side of the US. And the Korean War is forgotten for a reason. They don't want you to know this history. They want you to just know the sanitized US propaganda version of what happened during the war, when the US supposedly saved Korea, right? Rescued us. But now Korea is not a sovereign country. The South is controlled by the US, and the North gets sanctioned by the US for not listening to what the US government says. And sanctions result in deaths because food and other supplies are cut off to the country. It's an indirect form of murder, actually. It's genocidal. And this museum depicts things that American soldiers did during the war. If you read online about this museum, pretty much most mainstream sources say it's fabrication or it's exaggerated. Maybe it didn't even happen, they say, and they just made it up. It's propaganda against the US. But I 100% believe that it happened. Because just think of the things the US has done recently that we know of. During the Iraq invasion, during the course of that war, 1 million Iraqis died in this invasion that was just completely unjustified. And you remember Abu Ghraib and waterboarding and stuff like that, the horrific torture that American soldiers did on people? And that's stuff that happened within the last 20 years. Imagine 70 years ago, it would have been way more brutal. I think it would have been far more brutal and far more plausible that they actually did these things. That's the history of the Korean War that you're not taught in school. It's the Korean War, the stuff you hear about, it's kind of like if 50 years from now, America was claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and the people who did 9/11 were in Iraq. That's kind of like what the Korean War, the narrative that you hear about it is like. It's totally whitewashed. It's propaganda, US propaganda. Because, in the 20th century, America was just all about fighting communism. Because the rich people in America were threatened by it. They didn't want to lose their money or this capitalist system that they profited from. So they went and banded together to fight communism. They funded these wars, they funded the propaganda, they funded all that stuff. And US soldiers gladly went along with it. Because to them, Koreans weren't even humans. They were just genociding like another species or something. That's the truth that you need to know about. Remember it. Know it. because it happened. And that's why I don't support the US military or its wars. It's all about spreading the American empire, which I think is pretty evil. Countries should be left alone to make their own decisions. And Korea should be left alone. All the US troops in Korea should leave. There's 30,000 troops stationed in South Korea. And the US doesn't let South and North Korea reunite because America likes having a foothold in Asia because it wants to influence that region. But that's not right. They should let Korea be independent and sovereign again. Be its own nation. If that happened, I would actually gladly repatriate to my motherland. I wasn't born there, but that's where my parents are from. And my parents wouldn't be in America if it wasn't for the US occupation of South Korea, so how's that? I think a lot of Americans would actually like it if Asians of Korean descent went back to Korea. If you want that to happen, get the fuck out of Korea. Get the military out of there. Have the US government stop meddling in the country and let North and South Korea reunify. It's our country. It's not America's country to just play with like a fucking puppet because it wants to have some sort of influence against other Asian countries like China. Well, too bad. America should just focus on itself anyway and improving its own country. And with that, I'm going to end this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.